Hello and welcome to We Are the Deluge, a spoiler-free chapter-by-chapter podcast about the climate change novel The Deluge by Stephen Markley. We are your co-hosts, Emily Crandall and John McMahon, just a couple of outlaws about to blow this popsicle stand.
Sadly true.
I know. Yeah, it felt very meta, sad, but also silly. Today we are discussing the fifth and final chapter from Shane's point of view, set in 2036, which we are presenting in the form of a very dense political manifesto.
Yeah, the densest you've ever read, listened to?
Yeah, either, both.
Yeah.
Simultaneously, perhaps.
There's something about the thought of reading a political manifesto, like as an audiobook, just strikes me as a unique experience.
Yeah, I guess I've never done that. I'm not super into audiobooks,
Same.
But that seems like maybe an experiment we should do to see if it helps with teaching or something like that.
Yeah. You gotta find a good narration. That's the key.
That's the key. Yeah, get Angela Davis to do it or whatever. Shall we begin with our declarations?
Yes. What do you declare?
Okay, I declare Shane loses sight, maybe, of her position on violence, coming back to Kate, or maybe they were always together, and joins the ranks of the many vanished, though not in the way that 6 Degrees imagines.
Wow, that's really good. I've got Shane shifts from escalation to delay to escape as she confronts motherhood, revolution, love, and the absurd, all while wondering, where do you go in a world on fire? And while we're wondering, who is telling the story of quote unquote Shane Acosta?
Yes. The view from where?
The view from where? Honestly, article title when we write about this.
So good. Lots of plot notes, I think, also.
I suspect that'll be the case throughout book 5.
Yeah, lots of supplemental, lots of loose ends tying up and remaining loose.
Too many loose ends tied up? Question mark?
Okay, so we learn first, kind of in the world, that this chapter takes place right after the election.
Yes.
And we get in text box a kind of explanation for why the results have not been declared yet. So we learn that the pastor seemed to be close to the Electoral College vote with 264 votes, but President Love had won the popular vote and 7 states needed to recount. And then we get in the text box that Victor Love is AWOL. No one's seen him, which is hilarious. Not hilarious, but relevant.
Yeah.
To our moment. Love did not appear on election night, sent his campaign manager to declare victory, and he's not made a public appearance since 2 weeks before the election.
Wild.
Yeah. And then the pastor is just sort of openly inciting violence. This is ours.
Everyone, part of his platform.
Yeah. Everyone who has a Bible, go exact justice and let's reclaim this election, which is just okay. And so Markley writes, this 2 days after the election, nobody knew who won a debacle that was making 2000 and 2020 look relatively ordered and sane. And I guess this book came out before Trump was reelected.
Yes.
But it strikes me that maybe the pastor and Vic Love are supposed to be 2 exaggerated versions of the same thing.
Is that same thing Donald Trump?
Yeah, I think so. Right? There's this, one of the fun in a very dark sense things about a Trump presidency is the internet speculation over whether or not he's even alive. And I mean fun, not in a very complicated sense, but also it's absurd, right? This absurdist, how did we get here where every day we're is the president of our country even alive? And how would we know with confidence if he were dead or not? Which is an insane thing to think.
Yes.
I don't know. It just really made me think about our own moment. This Love on the one hand being mysteriously AWOL, and then the pastor being protect the vote, exact biblical justice. It's on the nose.
I tried as hard as I could to not indulge in the what if he's dead line of thinking.
Yeah. It's an interesting corner of the internet, though. I'm not on it myself, but I have some
people send
that are
me
on it. Yeah.
That's my preferred mode as well.
Yeah.
I mean, Victor Love, I'm trying to think what is the part of Trump that is in Victor Love and what is the part of Trump that's in the pastor, is I guess where my mind is trying to unspool.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for Love, right, it's kind of like what we were talking about, I think, in early Jackie chapters, maybe like the mundanity of some of the nefariousness, it's just like guys golfing and like scratching each other's backs, but then like people die. So it's there, like that tension, I think, is something we see in love. Like I think he, in the earlier parts of the book, he seems more serious of a politician, and then he becomes a little more like absurd and mundane over the course of the book, like as he sort of unravels, at least in a public facing sense, right? And who knows anything about his inner life? We don't get any like Victor Love.
The Siege gives us a couple. The Siege gives us some de facto.
But again, the view from where, I guess. The view
from where.
Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, we don't know who the president is.
Fair. Yeah. We could do the whole podcast on this. I just have to think a lot more about it.
Okay. What else do we learn?
We have Shane's letter that she dashes off to break protocol on page 664 to 665. And this is like a 99% sure that we know who this is, but I would just like to confirm it with you. So the letter she puts in the mail to Coshocton, Ohio is, they may want more than we want. Leadership has steered us wrong. They may want more than we want. Proceed with caution at their requests. She signed it. A friend of a bald friend, addressed it to Coshocton, Ohio, wiped it with alcohol, and dropped it in a USPS box, hoping the postal service wouldn't collapse in the next few days. This is to Tarney, yes?
100%.
Okay, good. Just wanted to confirm that.
Yes, that's a through line.
We get this meeting with Tinkerbell, and the friend of a bald friend is Alan, and we knew that Alan and Tarney were like one degree less of separation than the movement would prefer. Yeah. If it's even a movement, as they discuss. We meet Tinkerbell, kind of, in VR as a dark abscess. Her and
hilarious.
Shane.
Yeah.
We do not know who Tinkerbell is, correct?
I don't think so. I was racking my brain. I put like in my notes, I was like, do we know this person? Question mark, question mark, question mark. And I cannot figure out who it could be.
Yeah. We think, unless it's some kind of code or purposeful diversion, that it's a woman who lives in Colorado. And we have not met any of those.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which seems odd, but we haven't.
Yeah. And it makes sense as well that it'd be Colorado, because I think at one point we learned that the Joint Terrorism Task Force operates out of Denver.
Yes. Okay.
So that does check out.
But it's not Jen.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Because that's the only FBI person that we meet. Yes?
I think so.
I mean, other than the GBI contractors that detain Tony.
Right.
We meet them, but I guess that'd be funny.
It'd be odd.
But I don't think it's possible because they operate out of New England.
Yeah, good. Okay, we don't know them.
Okay. Bigger one. Shane avoids blowing herself and Lolly up because she notices that the final number of her address on the door is upside down. And this is a callback to Murdoch.
Yeah. So he saved her.
Yes, he sure did. Because he tells the story. I forget which chapter it is. Maybe it's Shane 2.
It's the first one, no?
Maybe it's in Shane 1. I forget exactly, but Murdoch says there's this one particular sniper or bomb maker that they were trying to track in Iraq, and they saw all these numbers that were upside down on people's doors, and they discovered that was the code that the locals knew. So that if a door had an upside down number, don't go in it.
Yeah.
And it took them a long time to figure that out.
Yeah. With a lot of casualties.
Yes. So Murdoch, despite his dissociation, saves Shane.
Yeah.
And pulls from his memory to do so.
Yeah. It's also like only acknowledged through reference to the upside down number. Like she doesn't ever say like, oh, he saved me. Oh, he warned me.
The first time I read this book, I didn't catch this.
Yeah.
The second time I read this book, a student had to point this out to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is kind of crazy because directly before that, in her meeting with Tinkerbell, she basically argues for throwing him under the bus.
Correct.
Yeah. Intense. Okay. And then we get Rebecca Solnit's Hope in the Dark.
Yes.
One of the
MacGuffin of the Deluge, it turns out.
One of the only things that Shane grabs aside from documents from the house.
Because it still has Kate's notes in them. And we get in the siege because Kate has been like reading Soulknit to inspire her speech to launch the siege, and some line about how she still wishes she had her original copy with the notes. And I'm pretty sure then also this is a play on the traveling Arendt book of book 1 with Matt.
Yeah. It also struck me as like, I feel like in the first Jackie chapter, we talked about men explain things to me.
Oh, we did, I think.
And I don't think we did it, like, I don't think we took it up as a cultural artifact, but we were just sort of like, this whole interaction is giving like men explain things to me, or her kind of inner monologue there. So I'm wondering like whether this is a dig at Soulknit readers or whether Markley's like a fan. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. I mean, this ties in very well to where we're going next, because I think our reading of that depends on how we read Shane and Kate together.
Yeah, great.
So should we
nice
head there?
Transition.
I think we talk about the largest like WTF, what's happening here, of this chapter, which is that Shane is Lucy from Matt 1, i.e. Kate 1.
Yeah.
Is this like, quote unquote, too cute?
Yes and no.
You love to see it. Tell me more.
It is too cute because it is like neat. It's a neat bow, right? And it like, I think in some way speaks a little to Matt's. I think Matt has a weird version of main character syndrome where he's like, I'm not actually the main character. I'm the scribe. I'm the witness. But like in centering the importance of his witnessing, he somewhat kind of renders himself a main character, which is maybe like why we get his perspective and not Kate's. It's like
especially if Matt is Stephen Markley.
Right. Especially. Yeah. So it speaks to like maybe the blindness of his main character syndrome, right? But it's like too cute, right? It's like too convenient that he missed that like there was something more important going on here, right? And like not that he would have known, but like for us, it's a kind of metaphor for like what he misses maybe.
Especially because by the time Kate and Matt meet, Shane has told Kate who she is and what she's up to and tried to recruit her.
Yeah. And that Kate creates a whole life with Matt and never, ever tells him. Ever.
Which
as far as we know. But maybe she was like trying to tell him in a way and he never picked up on it, right?
That is an excellent possibility that I would fully support.
Yeah. You know, there's little nuggets everywhere. She left a trail of breadcrumbs that he couldn't find or something.
Yeah. Because this is another reason, a more plot convenience reason why we don't have a Kate POV. There are much more substantive reasons why we don't have a Kate POV. This has been a central topic of discussion as I am literally teaching this novel right now in a class, is why is there no Kate POV, and some intense disagreements about Kate Morris.
So funny. It's so funny that the youth have that view.
Yeah. And 2 classes broadly anti-Kate.
Wow. Okay. But I think the way in which it's not too cute is it really speaks to Shane's loneliness throughout the novel.
Yes.
That like she appears with us as readers more than once and we don't have access to her.
I love that.
And I think it's sad, right? And like, we'll get into this later on, but like, we still don't really know who she is.
Right. Shane Acosta is not her name.
Right.
Luciana Alvarez is what was her name she was going by for a while.
Yeah. She has another alias.
Yes. Sydney something.
Yeah. Something more white sounding. Right. Yeah. She's like looking for it when they're doing a border crossing in this chapter. Yeah. I think it like speaks more broadly to like multiple layers of her loneliness too. The loneliness she has in her kind of calling, right? This life that she chose as an activist, right? As a revolutionary, but also like the loneliness she had in her family life, in her childhood, in her adolescence, that this is kind of like an extra layer of loneliness on top of an already lonely life.
Right. And it's not a surprise that she looked for someone who would upset the pattern of loneliness in her life amidst a comrade, because we get this brief mention of how she went to like South America or Central America for a while, and that is where she found inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something about that, like, I don't think, because we have heard, Shane is a Kate, like, on and off fucking the manager at work,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we know she has a kid. We never know who the dad is, et cetera, et cetera. But this places in Shane 5 that we see her having that deeper sense of connection, especially now that Alan is not in her life.
Yeah.
Because she contributed to his death and then killed his son.
Him. Yeah.
Yeah. Quinn Flash.
Right.
You could think about a hybrid subjectivity here.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Right. And like how lonely she is in motherhood, I think is right. Like the point that you just raised that we don't ever know who the father is like, that's lonely, right? It's not just, like solo parenting, but solo parenting on the run. Right.
Mm-hmm. At the same time that we come to learn in this chapter, this is one of the central disagreements in Kate and Matt's doomed relationship, is that Kate doesn't want kids.
Right.
Maybe she had some sense of, whether it's through her, period of time with Lucy, quote unquote, or not, like a sense of what being activist or being however she would define herself as, that like there is an additional layer of loneliness or forced disconnection if one is also parenting.
Well, but Shane didn't have Lolly yet, right?
No.
Right.
I'm just saying, like, I want,
being on the run.
Yeah, the being on the run, and because that's,
or
Kate,
like carrying that secret, right? Like
what she did.
Yeah.
Despite, several interrogations, but it seems we know of at least, I think, 2 by the FBI, including one with Chen. Despite her bike, her offices, her home being bugged, despite
having
a mole, despite there being like leaked sex tapes of her non-consensually taken, on and on and on. She never and Shane wonders if Kate even could have gotten traced back to her.
Yeah.
But regardless, Kate didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that a little bit, because I'm so steeped in this conversation ongoing in my class right now, I think that's Markley more firmly identifying that Kate is a problematic hero, but a hero nonetheless.
Yeah.
Right? We would think, or I don't know, would we think less of Kate if she's like, I am going to insulate Fierce Blue Fire, or attempt to do so, because I'm going to give up some information about 6 Degrees, which she would never do for 18,000 different reasons.
Right.
But, and again, to your point of maybe she left breadcrumbs for Matt, or maybe if we had a Kate POV chapter, we would hear her thinking about it all the time, about what, if anything, she should do with that information. And maybe it like just racked her anxiety every single day.
Yeah.
We know that she was so insistent everywhere and everything about having 0 connections whatsoever to 6 Degrees. And that's entirely explicable through the surveillance state and through the detention state and the carceral state wanting to shut down Fierce Blue Fire. But there was more to discover there than we, the reader, ever know until 670 pages into this book.
Yeah, that's crazy to think about too, because like she publicly disavows. Shane.
Yes.
While denying that she has any knowledge whatsoever into the structure, the motivation, the whatever. So it's like,
congrats, Kate.
Well, but also I wonder if it's like a way for them to like continue communicating. You know what I mean? Like,
yes. Shane wonders this, right?
Yeah. They like start this conversation as like young lovers, about the moral ground for the roads that they propose taking, and then they just keep having it even though they never see each other again, right? Like you can read Kate's public facing assessment of climate crisis, her recommendations for like her experiments, right, in grassroots activism and democracy,
her definitions of nonviolence.
Yeah, you can read those as in dialogue with
that's a
6 Degrees, right?
Yeah,
they've been talking this whole time.
With a shared existential seriousness of the problem they're confronting.
Yeah. Oh, Simone Schaefer. I just saw it.
Simone, not Sydney. Okay.
Yeah. Which is like Also, Schaefer is the last name of one of the characters in the Babysitters Club. So lots of podcast
shared
crossover
universe
here. Yeah.
Fanfic time. That's the writing we're going to produce.
Oh my
Deluge
God.
fanfic.
I love that. Yeah. On 673, right? Kate says it means that extremism always demagnetizes its own moral compass. The righteous start off wanting to kill the tyrant, but that's never enough. Then they've got to kill the tyrant's children and family and army and supporters. How we build this path. She nodded to Shane's tattoo. That matters almost as much as the path.
Classic means versus ends shit. Yeah.
I love it.
Me too. I mean, or even the next paragraph down, you won't win what you think you'll win. Civilization isn't careening into an ecocide because a few people are getting rich. It's because we are acquiescing to it. We are allowing it. And you can't change anyone's consciousness with a bomb. It's something that has to come from within.
Yeah.
Which is a statement that is extremely true of Kate Morris, but that I think Shane rightly calls out as being a little too woo.
Yeah. New age.
Which is so fun given Kate's like, I refuse to have any woo, new age shit, mysticism anywhere in my life.
Yeah.
Throughout the novel.
Yeah.
Does this book, does Shane's arc in this book demonstrate that Kate is right in those comments on 673? I mean, is that what Mark Lee is communicating to us?
Yeah. I mean, I think that read is like very available.
Yes.
But I don't know. I still feel like maybe this is a bad read, but I feel like to some degree, Mark Lee is refusing to answer that for us.
Yes.
Which I don't want to read as a fully like pessimistic cop out. You know?
I'm with you there.
But I think it's interesting to not squarely land on an answer to that question.
And I think we can have a similar version of this conversation, including the unanswerability of it in the confines of the novel itself, in the final 2 chapters of this novel.
Great. Put a pin in it.
Well, Shane thinks that Kate has won the argument.
Right. Yes.
Right? Well,
fully.
I love the way that Mark Lee structures this because we get Shane's fantasy of what the ongoing dialogue, as you correctly, I think, and wonderfully put it. And then what Shane's reality of it is. This is 674.
Yeah.
The more bombs that went off, the more they began to succeed, the more she wondered why Kate never said anything. Maybe because she was afraid even the hint of an association with quote-unquote terrorists would jeopardize her own cause. Or maybe she was secretly rooting for Shane, certainly watching her grow famous from afar, watching the public come for her, the state erupting to stop her. At some juncture, she had to admit to herself that Shane had a point, right? There's the fantasy. And then, in seeing Kate now, nearly 20 years on, conjuring this loose and uncertain army to stand arm in arm around arbitrarily chosen gas stations, Shane wondered about the roads not taken. Not if Kate had come to fight with them, but if Shane had gone and fought beside her. End of the Shane and Kate story.
Yeah. Or like, are both true?
I think both are true.
Yeah.
Because Kate being right doesn't preclude her from wanting Shane to
also be right.
Successful. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and like, there is a possibility that they are both right, like fully right, with sort of no caveats, but like the world and the issue at hand is so complicated that those like can appear to be pulling at odds, but also be entirely complementary to one another.
And it's the standpoint of the state that will say those are basically the same thing and fuck all of you and we're going to tear you apart.
Right, right. I do think, and maybe this is a good transition to the broader kind of like return to the morality of violence theme in this chapter. But like when Kai like concedes that Shane had been right before, it's really interesting because there's this read that's like, oh, we in sort of seizing or the means of violence from the state to some degree or contesting the state's monopoly on
there we go.
The means of violence.
Look at political science, Dr. Crandall right there.
We have like one authorized the state to scale up that violence. That's kind of one read. But the other is that we've made the violence of the state visible as violence.
Yep.
And like, which one is more useful, or how do they work alongside one another? Is I think the question that this chapter is also asking.
Mark Lee, a diversity of tactics guy.
Yeah, I think so. Which is also maybe why, like, was Kate right about Shane is not actually the question that Mark Lee, like, that's the surface question, but the question underneath is like, why do we feel like we have to answer that definitively or not? Mm-hmm. Like, what do we win in saying, yes, Kate was right, Shane chose the wrong path or built the path in the wrong way or something? Like, what do we win if that's our answer to the question?
I'm just want to have you come to my class on Tuesday.
I want to be a student.
We have someone coming in. She's never read the Deluge before.
Yeah, just
she's
today.
doing it. Yeah, just dropping in.
She's also young like you. Yeah. Oh man.
Don't worry. I've given you enough shout outs. They would know who you were. You'd have to use a pseudonym.
I love that.
You'd have to be Simone Schaefer.
Great. Perfect. Yeah. I mean, do we want to say anything about the like discussion of violence here that we haven't sort of alluded to or taken up yet?
I mean, I think Kai is the character, as you point out, who thinks that Shane previously was right, despite his anger at A, being cut out from the decision making at 6 Degrees by Quinn, Shane, and Archie, and B, being so mad at the murder of Alan.
Yeah.
And I think Kai is another character, and I guess one could say this of all of the principals in 6 Degrees, who, like Kate, would have been interesting to be in that character's mind a bit more. Although we arguably get much more Kai because we have the text boxes than we do of Kate, despite the Siege chapter. Right? So I'm thinking about the 660, 661 Kai, 659 text box Kai, the 660 page Kai, the 661 text box Kai. And like the escalation arcs are compressed into just those couple of things.
Yeah.
Right. Shane was right in Wisconsin. And then I think like the part of the violence question is also did 6 Degrees succeed or fail question?
Yeah.
Which I would go with your reading. A, we should question the will to ask that question in the first place. And B, Mark Lee doesn't want to answer that definitively from him. So I'm thinking, Kai's 661 part. We've served as an inspiration, Shane. People are pouring gasoline on themselves. They are putting the violence of the system in front of those perpetrating it, to your point earlier. Now it's on us to take the next step. The financial and industrial elite are not ashamed of themselves, and we're not about to let go of their power. We had no idea how far they would go. We sat around for too long telling ourselves we were a political movement or a social movement. We carried that fairy tale for so long because we didn't want the alternative to be true, because the truth is this is a war.
Yeah. What do we think that frame shift means for him? That it was like always, like, because it was always about violence, like that means it was always war? Or like, what do we think he understands the difference between a social or political movement and violence or war to be?
Yeah. It's in part, this is a simplistic answer, but it's in part about collectivity, right? There isn't, and we were just talking about Diva Woodley's book on Black Lives Matter and social movements and democracy in my different class earlier this week, and like the argument is the social movements, you have to have your numbers be relatively small, but like, there needs to be an open, broad process.
As opposed to war?
Whether that's opposed to war is, I think, a separate question.
Yeah, right. So in doing it underground, they could never really be a social or political movement, even if they inspired something that was more collective. Or like, did they establish a collective actually, even though it was clandestine?
That's a great question.
Like, would we want to call like having a mole in every, like, or a finger in every like pie of the state? Is that like a collective act? I don't know. This is hard for me.
This is really hard. I mean, this is why Mark Lee read a bunch of political theory.
I know.
A. And B, it's why we know that this is a novel that even as it is tying up plot threads, it is refusing to tie together moral and ethical and political ethics threads.
Yeah.
Which I would prefer that to some other combination, I think.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Although, no, I mean, I also like a messy open-ended.
Oh, I thought that's what you were saying.
Non-definitive.
Oh, I way prefer
plot ending. Yeah. And this is not the first time in book 5 I will wonder, like, is this way too convenient, to use one of your terms?
Too cute, too convenient.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like really hung up on what the difference between war and a social and political movement is. I just like, I hadn't thought about it that way in reading, but now I'm like, what does he understand that difference to be? Because that feels like really salient to, and then I also find myself like confronting the impulse to like figure out Mark Lee's real view, which is like,
yes.
Why do I want to do that? Yeah.
I mean, it's the same impulse that makes me want to ask, like, does Mark Lee think that Shane is right or Kate is right?
Yeah. Who's right? Mark Lee, tell us. Oh, man.
I mean, I'm flashing back to, I forget if we did this cultural artifact at some point, but I'm sorry if I'm spoiling yours, but to the Jesus and the Black Messiah scene where Daniel Kaluuya as Fred Hampton is doing the like Mao war and politics thing on the board, which is figuring in social movement, which I would certainly classify the Panthers as, and particularly the Chicago chapter of the Panthers as engaged in a war.
Right.
Because politics equals war, as Daniel Kaluuya as Fred Hampton writes on the chalkboard.
We did talk about that in one episode, but I don't remember which one.
Okay.
I can't even remember if it was a Shane one. Damn.
Who knows?
Oh, man. This is all folding in on itself. Which
Mark Lee would prefer.
Here for. Do we want to say anything more about the question of success or who's right?
I think it's a conversation we return to in the final 2 chapters of this book.
Good.
In part.
Well, maybe we could also think about it not as like a yes or no question of did they succeed, but like what did they do?
And also, how would they themselves define success?
Yeah.
Because I think that despite them not necessarily always talking with one another, but oftentimes internally wondering that we find out via text boxes if their movement is a success or not, it's a little bit unclear what would constitute success.
Or if they even agree on that.
Or if they would even agree.
Right.
Do you need to, if the U.S. remains a capitalist political economic system, but we reach net zero in 10 years, did 6 degrees call that a success? I don't know how they would answer that question. And to your point, maybe different of the principles would answer that question differently.
Right. Because then it's sort of like means ends. Right. Like for Kate, the answer is no, clearly, I think.
Absolutely. It's a no for her.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, but you're right. The 6 degrees is willing to weigh the ends much more strongly. Except that also they don't because those things can't be so separated as the arguments in the cabin in Wisconsin relate, as, Dr. Alan Ford, Professor Ford gives his 3 reasons why, which are all movement related reasons back to the we're not a social movement, we're at war speech from Kai. Like, who is a person whose perspective might be nice to have on that question? Alan. Yeah. But Shane only has Alan to argue with in her dreams.
I mean, also, like, Murdoch's perspective would be nice if we could access it, but we can't here.
No, we sure can't.
Yeah, except in this, like, very opaque discussion of his tattoo.
Which, Emily and I, that's how we'll consecrate completing this novel.
Can I take us to some of that temporality stuff by way of the theme of vanishing?
I would love to do that.
Okay. Did you notice how many times in this chapter that word gets used?
I sure didn't.
Okay. It's that word explicitly vanishing, vanished, vanish or like a word that is like overlaps with vanishing, like empty or scattered or something like that, on 5, 6, 7, 8, like 10 different pages, which is very fascinating. So on 653, we get vanished twice on the very first page. Now, homebuyers had all but vanished. Almost all of the beach had since vanished. On 654, we get President Love is AWOL, not vanished, but he's AWOL.
Of course.
On 655, we get most of the homes along Route 90 were battered, destroyed, empty, foreclosed, for sale. There's a hallucinogenic qualities, right? So because all the people have vanished, there's empty pilings on the ocean side. That goes on to 56. And then on 57, she talks about her and Lolly are having an argument about the insects and plants tipping into extinction, which is like an interesting way to say vanishing. Mm-hmm. And then there's on the next page, then there's not a mention for a little while, but they're on like 663, we get vanished twice in one sentence, talking about her mom. She forgot about Shane. She vanished into her bottles, and then she vanished for good. Drawers empty, suitcases missing. And then on 65, we get an abandoned house. So like whoever was there vanished. And then on 68, we get
Shane in Wyoming.
Shane. Yeah, Shane, she made friends and vanished, had affairs and slipped away. This is her like in the past. And then on 75, we get when they're driving through the storm, the first wall of particulate mist. With the first wall of particulate mist, the highway seemed to vanish. And then I think the last one,
the vanished municipalities of southern Kansas.
Yeah, the vanished municipalities of southern Kansas. Where's that one on? Oh, and then sorry, there's one more. Oh no. Then there's just on 678, right? Yet another sorrow to tally for people she'd once loved who were now one way or the other gone.
Oof.
And that's the last one. Isn't that fascinating?
Yes. So I'm in the off-brand PDF or text version of the book, and vanish does come up fairly frequently. Mm-hmm. It looks like it's often talking about either people or like the Midwest and what has vanished from the industrial Midwest.
Yeah.
So consistent, but the intensity of it has increased. And over time, perhaps.
And I think in this chapter, it's like, strikes me as a really, like, that's sort of Shane's fate to some degree, if we can.
Oh, I will be asking a version of this question in theory coming soon to the podcast you're listening to.
I love that. So I just wanted to flag that kind of, we talked about, I think, the eternal return at some point, and this like, that vanishing is sort of like the theme of her life in some like central way. And then, right, like she vanishes from the novel.
She does. Arguably, she was never there to begin with.
Arguably, she was never there to begin with. Like, so that takes us to the text box on 664. John.
It does.
Tell us.
The cipher. Are we reading this whole thing?
Should we?
Let's go back and forth sentences. Let's just read the whole thing. It's worth it. Perhaps she was better at creating a fog around herself than even she realized.
The others, Murdoch, Kai, Allen, and Quinn, they'd left enough clues littered across the global communications infrastructure that one could recreate their stories.
Explicate their lives with a careful reconstruction of surveilled conversations, location data, purchases, archived social media, search histories, and access to every digital keystroke they'd ever produced, from old high school research papers and blogs they kept as teenagers, to anonymous tweets from fake accounts, to childhood diaries haphazardly left in old Microsoft Office files.
And yet Shane had left so little evidence of herself. All of it having to be pieced together from the trails of the others. It was almost like her life didn't truly begin until 2014 when she walked into a restaurant for breakfast.
That's so funny. These snippets of an opaque working class American childhood lack crucial detail.
There are gaps.
There is her rage and intelligence and a fevered sense of injustice, but her core story remains unknowable and maddeningly out of reach.
Here following is what is known of the conclusion to her life as Shane Acosta.
Past this point, the darkness thickens.
Incredible.
What the fuck?
So is she real?
I think this text box gives us merit to or warrant to ask that question.
Yeah. But it's interesting because we get so much of her. So it's like...
And we get in this chapter when the text box is saying we don't know who this is and we certainly don't know anything about her before 2014. So let us project, backwards to Wyoming, which is a time in the time period in which Shane Acosta exists, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. But it's also the only time we really get Shane giving us any detailed memories of her childhood, her youth. She certainly alluded to her mother's alcoholism several times.
Yeah.
But no actual scenes, nothing about her dad. She's here in Mississippi, on the Gulf, which is part of the reason that she's having these memories, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does Shane exist?
I don't know. I mean, her description of her childhood, meager as it is I think really important too, right?
Yes.
It's her life is shaped by environmental racism, environmental devastation, right? She says that what is the joke she makes about getting hooked up with a guy who was into deep ecology?
Yeah.
But she's like, I had to learn about or figured out my Cancer Alley life, right? She kind of retroactively, this is on the same page. She looked around at her family's Cancer Alley lives, the sacrifice zone she'd called home, where the sun was a hazy red dragon breathing through the spires of refinery architecture. And she went hard for a few years at drinking and drugs herself. But then she goes south, right? And discovers revolution.
I don't think these are mutually exclusive to say that Shane is an exercise of, if we didn't know the crucial details of this revolutionary, but knew some other data points, then we could infer from those others what this revolutionary was. Mm-hmm. This is a possible answer.
Yeah.
And that in the world of the novel, Shane Acosta is an alias for a real person that exists, right? Those can coexist together.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
But thinking of that as an exercise into, a question that I asked my class about when we were in the Siege chapter and people were unhappy with Kate is does a social movement need a Kate Morris? Right. And it's does a book about a revolutionary movement need a Shane Acosta? Mm-hmm. To pair those two once again?
Yeah. I mean, I think my answer is yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't think that the possibility that is introduced that Shane doesn't exist, I don't think that takes anything away from any of the deep recesses of her life that the book explores.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a student correctly predict what the text boxes were.
Really?
Yeah, in Shane 3.
Wow. I feel like there's still so much, but also we've been talking so much.
Oh, there is so much still to say about Shane Acosta.
What do you think? Okay, I was thinking back on the first Shane episode where actually so much of it is Murdoch, not Shane.
Yeah.
And then here he's slipping away kind of, but he also saves her. And what do we make of him? His centrality to the Shane chapters, but also him as really central, I think, to the novel, more so than some of the other principals. He's the bomb maker.
Yes, he's the one that, to your point earlier, Shane is willing to burn.
Yeah.
To prevent this mysterious next op from going off.
But I think that there's a version of, he knows that, right? He knows he's the expendable one.
Especially now that he trained his own replacements.
Right.
Capitalism's gravediggers. Guess who produced them?
Right.
Capitalism.
I feel there's a version of Murdoch where he always expected.
Does Murdoch even exist?
Oh my God. Where he always expected for this to be the last thing that he did. Mm-hmm. But we don't know his fate, right?
I believe we do know I believe we know his fate at the end of the novel.
Okay. I couldn't remember. I was trying to rack my brain, but
I mean, his grip on reality and temporality, such as they exist, is itself vanishing in this chapter in like a very kind of tragic way as well. I mean, he's, says at one point that I'll get home tomorrow. This is 660. I'll get home tomorrow and barely remember this. I'll have a thought or memory, and I can remember having the thought or remembering the thing, but I can't recall the thing itself. I promise you I'm not doing Kant in theory. Little like going insane, slow rolling for 30-some years. That's not an answer, Shane hissed. Oh, Shane, my love. He finally looked at her sadly. There are no answers anymore.
Yeah.
Which is Murdoch's non-answer answer to, was 6 degrees or FBF right? Did 6 degrees succeed or not?
Yeah, it's an unanswerable question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are no answers no more, which implies at one point there were.
There were, yeah. Maybe Murdoch is the closest we get to Markley's real thoughts.
All along we thought it was Matt, but no, it was Kellen Murdoch. Murdoch.
Murdoch.
Uncle Murder.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Should we talk about Shane, the function of Shane kind of in the overall novel?
Given that she might not exist, I think that's appropriate. I think one thing that this reading of the Deluge has done for me, and you are a major reason for this as a result, is thinking about Shane and motherhood.
Yeah.
And there's so much Lolly in this chapter too.
So much, yeah.
Including, and this was going to be my intro thing, is that Lolly's post-biological, autoteological super intelligence from the deep future inhabiting an avatar in a role-playing game.
Well, I didn't use
called
that
podcasting
as a funny thing because I'm gonna take us there shortly.
Beautiful. Okay, now a previous thing you said made sense. But so there's that. There's like can I even get Lolly to care about the climate, the sixth mass extinction, et cetera, et cetera. There's worrying about Lolly's lack of friends. There's Lolly's comment that why would I care about this world when we have all these other worlds and they're so much better? There's Shane like doing some intense parenting under duress as they're about to get stopped by the murderous, newly sovereignly independent Kansas army or whatever the fuck.
Yeah, crazy.
At the end of the chapter. And then there's, I absolutely love the discussion, not so much of Shane's mother, although I think the parts about Shane's mother are very poignant, but 664, right after what you were reading earlier. Maybe she'd be dead if she hadn't gone south. She saw the village where her mother came from. She met true revolutionaries. She stared at dark surf on beaches of the Southern Hemisphere and began to dream. She came home and found like minds. They schemed and they plotted and they laid the groundwork for resistance unlike anything their empire had ever seen. Right? So her visiting her mother's homelands in South America, right, we're led to presume, is what set her on the path. Right. And so there's the contrast that Markley is drawing between what Shane's absent mother bequeathed to her and what Shane as a present mother is unable to bequeath to Lolly.
Yeah.
And I think, there's like Barbara Ehrenreich in there and double shifts and triple shifts in there and all of that. And there's the loneliness. Right? Like Lolly has a lonely parent. Shane has a lonely daughter.
Yeah.
A lonely kid, right?
And I think
post-biological superintelligence.
The one Quinn text box we get here too is, I think, really critical for thinking about like what Shane as a character lets us think about the relationship of something like motherhood to climate change, right? To environmental crisis, to questions of like what a more just and sustainable world would look like, right? And so Quinn says, this is on 659, Quinn thought Shane looked just awful, old and overweight. She'd built this moment up in her mind for months, and here was the woman she'd so feared, a harried mother on the verge of collapse. Maybe they should have been feeding her even more money through Archie's system. Maybe they shouldn't have left a waitress spinning her wheels in a collapsing economy, which was probably what was fueling her short-sighted discontent. She was relieved that Shane at least didn't have the kid with her, although at this point there was nothing you could put past her. Shane had been unraveling ever since Alan. So it's like this observation from Quinn is really fascinating to me because it's on the one hand, she's a harried mother. On the other hand, she's a waitress in a collapsing economy, but Quinn doesn't actually theorize those things together.
An excellent point.
You know, like she seems to sort of blame Shane to some degree for how harried she is, for how poor she is. And in part, it's like a almost kind of like choice feminism thing, right? Like you are the one who chose to have this kid. Why can't you accept the consequences? But at the same time, as she recognizes that like, well, the economy is collapsing. So I guess there's a sort of limit to what she can do. Maybe we should have actually done something a little more for her, right? Like what a weird, if that was possible. And Quinn really thinks that would have prevented this chaos. Like, why wouldn't they have just done that in the first place, right? Like,
great question.
She must not take that observation seriously.
I don't think so. It's Quinn, right? Who, when Shane brings Lolly to Wisconsin, is like, you said something to the effect of you didn't have to have a kid. No, that's Kai at the end of Shane 2. Well,
Kai thinks it to himself.
Okay, that's what it was. Okay.
I think Quinn says something like that.
Okay, got it.
Not as explicitly, but I think Kai thinks it and feels guilty for thinking it.
Yes, because at the end of Shane 2 with Kai, Shane's like, I need more money for precisely the reason that Quinn 10 plus years later.
It's like, oops, maybe we should have given her some more money.
But still, to your point, refuses to theorize. So I think this has helped me kind of clarify one of the things that Shane brings to this novel as a character, and that Shane is the simultaneous in an incommensurable but non-contradictory way. Mm-hmm. The one for whom we see the true and genuine and human appeal of revolutionary dreams and revolutionary life, and the utter ideological and practical and material teardown of like the revolutionary dream. Because Shane is a revolutionary. Yeah. There's no doubt. And we understand the appeal of that. And I think Mark Lee writes the appeal of that in an excellent way for Shane, in a way that's not exactly naive, in a way that like they make fun of Quinn for having a very naive notion, like, activist dorm room notion, or armchair revolutionary notion. But for Shane, it's real. And we find out in this chapter, it has real roots in her life and in global anti-colonial history. And simultaneously, we see Shane's loneliness. We see Shane's inability, despite those revolutionary dreams, to let those dreams overcome the material reality of her life and the life of others who are similarly situated, albeit without the revolutionizing in the world. And we see through her call for escalation, which culminates in the very next chapter in an escalation that is killing Alan, Emmy, and Perry, that she then seems to regret by the time we get to this, and she's now trying to de-escalate, right? Like the falsity of that revolutionary dream. Yeah. So Shane is simultaneously the vehicle for exploring its appeal and its impossibility or its sparseness.
Or like what it looks like when the dream dies, right? Like, which doesn't mean that it has to, right? But at least accounts for what it looks like when it does, right?
Yeah.
And that some of that is mundane, extremely not spectacular. Mundane. Yeah.
So that's a callback to the first Shane episode.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. I like that.
I think that's the right place to end.
Should we move into our what others have gotten right and wrong theorizing section?
I'm so ready for this. Since you teased yours, I think you should go first.
Okay. So all the stuff you flagged with Lolly, I wanted to explore with, surprise, surprise, Donna Haraway.
Perfect.
Okay. So Lolly says, she claimed she wasn't really a girl in America in 2036, but a post-biological, auto-teleological super intelligence from the deep future inhabiting an avatar in a role-playing game, living a complete mundane human life from cradle to grave. Mundane. I didn't even notice that was in there.
That's
great.
Back.
And then this like thing that she says about we have other worlds now. They're better anyway. And Shane has a read of Lolly there that I think is maybe wrong. Or maybe we could use Haraway as a way to kind of push back on Shane's reading of
perfect.
Lolly. So Shane says, it was such an obvious and unsparing thing for a child of her generation to say, how could her own daughter be such a dystopian cliche? And then again, what kind of mother had she been, right? She'd never taken her camping, blah, blah, blah. So then she like sort of turns Lolly's observation about the world into a like self criticism, right?
Yes.
So like I failed in some way to make my daughter care about
never took her to parks and camping and all of that.
But I wonder if Lolly isn't like actually attuned to something that Shane is maybe missing. So I was thinking about a cyborg manifesto, and this is an essay that Haraway writes for, I think publishes for the first time in the Socialist Review in 1985. And then it gets like repackaged and repurposed in a bunch of different edited volumes throughout the 90s. And then like eventually there's a kind of book long essay treatment of it. But a cyborg manifesto, right? Science, technology, and socialist feminism in the late 20th century. And she opens with this idea that we might think about the cyborg as offering a frame or like a tool to do what she calls or build an ironic political myth that is faithful to feminism, socialism, and materialism. And then this is just the opening sentences, the invitation. So perhaps more faithful as blasphemy is faithful than as reverent worship and identification, which is something I think like people on the left hate. Blasphemy, which is it's really funny because I think Haraway is like a really astute reader of the left, and this idea that like blasphemy might actually be more faithful in some way to the really, really revolutionary thinkers is I think something that Shane is missing, maybe.
Oh, I love this idea.
But that also like the cyborg as a way to think about the collapsing, the already having been collapsed, right? Like boundaries between things that like, you know, European Western Enlightenment thinking frames as diametrically opposed to one another. So for Haraway, right, like time by the late 20th century is mythic already, right? And then she says the cyborg is our ontology. It gives us our politics. The cyborg is a condensed image of both imagination and material reality. The two joined centers structuring any possibility of historical transformation. So I think there's like a degree to which Shane has not really taken the imaginative part very seriously. And maybe it's kind of because that sort of trajectory that you just laid out for us, that like what this story is of a revolutionary losing faith.
Well, it's also because I think she would say Quinn is too invested in the imaginary, the imaginative, and thus Shane has to distance herself from that.
But so Haraway talks about this as actually, right, as a problem of what she calls, or she's traces the relation between organism and machine in the traditions of Western science and politics as a border war. She uses the term war. And the stakes for her have been the territories of production, reproduction, and imagination. So I also think Haraway is a way to actually think this question of what Shane, as a mother and a revolutionary and a poor woman, like offers us in the novel as well. So like, how do we think about the border war and the stakes of this border war also for climate change, right? And I think there's like three specific kinds of borders that she's interested in. One is human and animal, two is organism and machine, and three is the physical and the non-physical. And I feel like Lolly here is like actually onto something. You know, she's not just like a kid. Also, what does it mean, just as an aside, for her to be a dystopian cliche? Like, does that mean she's like, oh, the world's ending, like, why should I care? I'm 12. Like, let me go in my VR. Or does it mean that she's like a cliche character in a dystopian novel of like days past, right? Like Shane, she's a cliche because Shane read Parable of the Sower or something like that, right? And so Lolly's a cliche from the past, but in the present.
I read
about the future.
That's an incredible reading. I had read that line every time as like we always look down upon the generations below us for not caring about the right shit.
Yeah. Okay. That's probably the simpler read.
Well, simpler but worse.
No, I think mine's a bit of a stretch, but I'm going to lean into it for a second.
Please.
Okay, but also like, what does post-biological, non-teleological super intelligence mean? Because like, I think one read of it is actually not a Haraway cyborg read. It's like the mind has been fully like separated from the body. And so there's not a kind of like materiality to the super intelligence that constitutes her subject or her subjectivity. But like post-biological doesn't mean non-biological.
This is a great point.
Right. And so like what would it mean go.
So it's not non-teleological, it's auto-teleological.
And like what exactly meaning of teleological is operative there, because it doesn't always mean the same thing. Like one reading of it is that like it's an end that is set in advance. Another is that it's like a nature that is unfolding and is kind of always like in need of being cultivated, but is not inevitable.
I interpreted it as Lolly in VR Slapdish World had come across a bunch of Delanda and like had gotten it downloaded into her consciousness. So like autopoiesis, yeah.
But we also know that Lolly, like in some ways, kind of struggles with her physical body, right?
Yeah.
Like we know that like one of her trauma responses is bedwetting or wetting her pants. And we see her in the same chapter where she has this like, dystopian cliche, like who cares about this world? Other worlds are better. She's also having this visceral like fear that her mother's going to vanish, right? She like, and
please put a pin in that for me.
Great. And like, Shane is like weirded out by how much she seems to like, how much wisdom she appears to have in that fear that is also really childlike fear,
yes.
Right? It's like a visceral, instinctual, childlike fear. My mother is going to be taken away from me. But what also if we read Lolly saying other worlds are better as not an argument about virtual reality, but as a revolutionary argument? As
another world is possible.
Yes.
Ooh.
Yeah. So like Lolly is like picking up potentially the revolutionary baton as Shane is dropping it, but she hasn't yet come up in it and she hasn't fully fleshed out these possibilities, but they're there. And in part they're there because she has sort of like become cyborg. I want to propose that as a read of Lolly.
Maybe Lolly wrote the text boxes.
Ooh.
maybe Lolly wrote the Shane chapters.
Oh my God. Okay. We have to come back to that possibility. I think maybe a bit of a stretch, but I was like, how did we get through this whole book without talking about Haraway?
It's a wonderful.
I think we've always been talking about her to some degree, but like I wanted to use the invitation of post-biological, auto-teleological to specifically think with the Cyborg Manifesto.
Well, I would add that your proposal works on a more meta level more meta level also because Haraway is so interested in myth. Mm-hmm. And if Shane doesn't exist, then she is literally a myth.
Yeah. Yes.
So there's that kind of formal way in which she resonates with what Haraway is doing in Cyborg Manifesto.
Well, and this idea of mythic time.
Yeah.
Right. I think maybe helps us think about the ways in which the timelines are kind of folding in on each other at the same time as we're trying to like tell a story, which requires to some degree a narrative that can make sense in time.
Yeah.
Right?
And in some ways, in a more simplistic reading of Haraway and of cyborg as idea, what is 6 degrees if not a cyborg, right? This like assemblage of multiple humans, but also the very tactile materials of bomb making.
Yeah. Oh, and the kind
invisible
of seizing
infrastructure.
Yeah, but also the seizing of the tools of the surveillance state, right? To some degree, to challenge the kind of solidity or sovereignty of
course, right.
of the
Because they don't go underground, they just become normies.
Yes. Yeah.
Damn, that's really good, Emily.
Thank you. Okay. Taking the pin out.
Mine is we'll get to the pin on Lolly in my cultural artifact.
Okay, great. Keep the pin back in.
Make sure that pin stays in. Now that we're talking about explosives and 6 degrees. All right, so I traveled all the way back to the year 2009 in honor of like early Shane, and something that I literally have not read a word of since I read it like at the University of Denver, like way back in 2009. And I would like to bring our attention, Emily, to Albert Camus' The Myth of Sisyphus. And wonder 3 things. Question number 1.
I wish people could see my face. I'm blown away. Okay.
Question number 1 is whether or not the category of the absurd, as Camus understands it in The Myth of Sisyphus, is a better question to ask or to a category to apply to 6 degrees than whether they're right or wrong.
Yeah. Wow.
And so I'm going to read a couple. I am in the vintage.
My instinct is yes.
Yeah. So I'm in the vintage version of The Myth of Sisyphus. So this is page 28. The absurd is born of this confrontation between the human need and the unreasonable silence of the world. And there's something about here we are, 5 principles, and eventually the small network of people saying, what about the human need that the invisible infrastructures, if not silence, it's the invisibility that they're trying to confront as 6 degrees. And also just the sheer gap of the confrontation that 6 degrees understands between human need and the unreasonable silence of the world. What I would put with page 64 of Myth of Sisyphus. Thus I draw from the absurd 3 consequences, which are my revolt, my freedom, and my passion. By the mere activity of consciousness, I transform into a rule of life what was an invitation to death. And so here we have Shane channeling her Cancer Alley upbringing, her Sacrifice Zone upbringing, right? The invitation to death. And for Camus, like haunting this entire, long book length essay is the question of suicide. And we have Shane's note in the chapter that like she maybe would have just like drank herself to death, like she presumes happened to her mom, if not for her revolt, her freedom, and her passion, to use Camus' terms here.
Okay, but also Murdoch.
Also Murdoch.
Yeah.
And also Murdoch, right? So it contained within this is maybe what 6 degrees is doing is not a question of right or wrong, or we can define success in what one specific end is, but rather like acting as human beings in the face of the unreasonable silence of the world, in face of the invitation to death. And if not, right, death is like an immediate act, the death of not giving a shit or not trying to change the conditions that seem unchangeable or something like that. So that there's something absurd, but absurd in like the most valorizing sense about what 6 degrees is up to.
Can I also
please
throw this in there? What if maybe it's like pressing on this like impulse we have to only do things that are realistic when we are facing something that is so like, why would we accept this as real or realistic?
Yeah.
Or as reasonable or whatever.
Yeah.
And in saying our response can only be realistic or can only be reasonable, we render reasonable the thing that is unreasonable.
It's an excellent point and said much better than I had been saying it. And, that's That's the condition that, I talk with my students about the version of that condition in so many of the courses that I teach. I imagine perhaps you do the same.
Yeah.
I've had conversations with colleagues that are a version of that. Like if we think that higher ed as an institution is fucked, or the particular institution of which we are a part is fucked, but we nonetheless try to make it not fucked anyway, like there's something to claim within that act. And so I think that framing, like, well, I'm going to refuse to consent to the reasonability of, of all of this shit. So that's like the 6 degrees version.
Yeah.
The second question is whether the novel The Deluge would make sense as absurd art in Camus' understanding of absurd art. And here's just like one tiny, I think the answer is no, actually.
Oh, okay. Tell me.
Yeah. So he spends a long time talking about absurd creation and absurd art in Myth of Sisyphus. But like one line is that absurd revolts are tributes that man pays to his dignity in a campaign in which he is defeated in advance. And that, I think, is a good character. I don't want to say anything about the rest of the novel. So I'll just say, I think through Shane 5, despite Shane 5, perhaps, like absolutely Markley is a tribute to dignity in a campaign in which humans trying to avert the worst of the climate crisis, worst possible feature of the climate crisis is defeated in advance. The problem is Camus goes on to talk about like absurd art itself has to be aware of that precise like limitation in advance, but also refuse it gets translated as intelligence, but perhaps like reasonability based on what you had just said is the right word. And I think that, yes, Markley is extremely aware of the limitations of the world, but I think that he wants the resort to a lot of like the clever self-consciousness of one version of the form of the novel that like pushes it a little bit outside Camus' understanding of absurd art. But that I would need to like read the entirety of the last half of Myth of Sisyphus again, instead of like jumping around an underlined copy of it from 16 years ago.
I love this so much. So like, okay, let me think about reframing. So is the question like...
The question is like the tendentious way to put the question is the deluge too clever to be absurd?
Or
is
does
its cleverness
the deluge like... Is the cleverness of the deluge amount to an argument that we're fucked?
Yeah, perhaps. That's once again, Emily Crandall, the better way of framing my thought.
Well, but
when was the last time you read Camus? Because it seemed like it was sooner than 2009.
I honestly, probably 2009.
Yeah.
But I think this is so interesting because like when you were first describing his description of the absurd, I was actually thinking about Haraway and the myth and imagination, but this idea that like there's some kind of limit to the absurd that's about how it operates with, or kind of self-consciously operates within the confines of what renders it absurd. And like, so that almost seems to me like impossible to get out of too, kind of on his own terms. So like, is it an impossible project? Right.
Like the myth of Sisyphus can't ever meet the conditions that Camus lays out in the myth of Sisyphus or something like that.
Right. Like, so like the myth of Sisyphus is on, I don't know.
Is a proof of its own impossibility.
Yeah. A proof of its own impossibility. And then
I think he'd be okay with that.
If that's true of the myth of Sisyphus, is that also true of the deluge?
Okay, hold on to that thought because I have one more quote I want to read, and then I have a question for you.
Okay.
We're just going to go straight to everybody wants it, so we're going to give the people what they want. 123. I leave Sisyphus at the foot of the mountain. One always finds one's burden again. But Sisyphus teaches the higher fidelity that negates the gods and raises rocks. He too concludes that all is well. This universe, henceforth without a master, seems to him neither sterile nor futile. Each atom of that stone, each mineral flake of that night-filled mountain in itself forms a world. The struggle itself towards the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. And so I ask you, Emily Crandall, must we imagine Shane happy?
I feel like we must.
Yes, I think we do.
Like whether she's real, whether they get out of Kansas.
And in some ways, it's more necessary the less real she is.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Yes.
Because it's mythic, as a la Sisyphus and a la Donna Haraway.
Yeah. So she falls away from the revolutionary dream, but gets something else. Or she planted seeds for someone else to take up the revolutionary mantle. And I think
that's the reading.
She gets to drive off into the sunset, right?
Luckily, Shane's truck was electric.
I love that that's the last line of this chapter. It's so good.
It's really funny. It's a little bit of also a fuck you from Mark Lee, I think, and I enjoyed it.
Should I go back and read Camus? That was really fun.
I certainly had that thought when I don't know how this idea struck me. I think I saw a Sisyphus reference a few days just randomly before rereading this chapter. And it was that combined in my head to
That's so
assemblage.
Funny.
So my proposal is that this is a potentially absurd novel that meets and asks us to explore the condition of the absurd, and that Shane is Sisyphus, who we must imagine happy.
I accept.
Thank you.
Great.
Cultural artifact time.
Yeah, let's do it.
You should go first. I just talked for way too long about something I don't know anything about.
Okay. I propose that we pair this chapter with Grimes' 2020 album.
Yes. Yes. You have no idea how thrilled. Now I'm making the face that you made when I was like, we're doing Camus.
Yes. Okay, so there's so many things about this album or about this book that made me think about this album, but also this chapter in particular. One is the timeline in our world of Grimes, as a pop star, but then and making this album, but around the time that she also becomes associated with Elon Musk and has children with him. And then he all on the lead up to something that takes us beyond into our present, but that is not in the present of the novel, right? Elon Musk and Grimes, I don't think have a baby together in the Deluge.
Sure.
Or no, they do have a baby together in the Deluge, but Elon Musk isn't politically relevant in the Deluge in the way he is in our current moment, or was in our current moment and is no longer, or is
only
in some way, but
at fascist conferences in Britain. Yeah.
Yes. So
virtually
the kind of techno fascist feudalist, whatever, confluence of the Silicon Valley kind of state security apparatus and so on and so forth, that Grimes has an association with that's really kind of opaque and odd. Yeah. Right. She was an odd pop star. She claimed to have studied pop stars rather than wanting to be one. And so in some ways her essence as an artist is about performing or recreating or parodying or I don't know, some other kind of verb, pop star rather than being pop star. You know what I mean?
She's ersatzing pop star.
Yeah. But then the Miss Anthropocene is such a funny title for an album. And it has tracks on it So Heavy I Fell Through the Earth, which she talks about as a song about sex and love, not as a song about the earth necessarily. Songs like Delete Forever, Violence, a song with a title that's a symbol, a series of symbols, which evokes the name of her baby with Elon Musk, right? You'll Miss Me When I'm Not Around. It's not a super climate changey novel. It's a novel about,
despite it being so obviously.
Yeah. It's kind of about, I think I can't remember if this was a Pitchfork review or the Rolling Stone or somebody, but some commentator called it a sublime, mood perfect vignette of self-destructive nihilism. One of the songs, or I forget which song, but and she talks about love, the thing about love is that it fucks up your career. And she says things when I fell in love, I lost my masculinity. She's has this really interesting way that she's playing with gender and all these kinds of things. And like the way she talks about the environment or like and misanthropy, like what's the relationship of like climate change to misanthropy, right? Which is a question I think maybe the novel's exploring. But I thought in this chapter, like the juxtaposition of like Rebecca Solnit's Hope in the Dark with like a Grimes approach to like misanthropy, right? And / Anthropocene, right? Is maybe like a way to think through some of those like tensions in 6 Degrees a little bit, but like overdrawn for the purposes of rendering them pop.
It sure is.
But that also like that there's like a weird presence of pop stardom in general in the novel. Like, and there's
Xaden.
Like a couple, Xaden, like who is Xaden? What does pop stardom have to do with climate change? You know, as I think
and Xaden does shit that one could imagine Grimes doing. Like I'm thinking about the Sensory News story where the next story is Xaden's post-indigeneity album Seminole Party.
Yep. Like that could totally be a Grimes album, right? But there's like one glancing reference to a pop star here, which is from the past, not from the present, but like it just made me and then like reading Haraway kind of made me think about Grimes and then think about this album as like a really crude kind of distillation of some of the nihilism of this chapter.
Yeah.
To a degree. Yeah.
Shouts. It is Anupa Mystery and Pitchfork who used the
it is
sublime mood perfect vignette of self-destructive nihilism. Yep.
So good. Mm-hmm. Like is that, I don't know, it's kind of giving Murdoch here.
Yeah. And nihilism specifically came up in both the NPR and Vice reviews as well.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, what does it mean? I mean, and maybe this is like Camus and the absurd again, right? To like evoke the Anthropocene and thus climate change in an album that's ultimately about nihilism, right? Does it concede the unrealisticness of the reality that we're living in or something like that?
Right,
yeah.
Right. And about the Deluge, I would call it sublime and immersive, but I don't think it's that interested in self-destructive nihilism.
No, not at all.
Not even in Keeper, the most self-destructive and arguably nihilistic character that is in the novel.
Yeah, I mean, I think
the book interested in that.
Keeper, like the Keeper chapters are so invested in the question of redemption.
Yes.
Right. And so like
in its most sacred meaning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's my proposal.
Had a thought for the last Keeper chapter, some cultural artifacts. Yeah. Well, you brought it up, so I think we should briefly address, because I did do some Googling around, what we think the pop song is that Shane is listening to when she sees Kate on the bottom of like 16? Back in 668. She caught Kate, we later find out, caught Shane staring at her early in the night. Shane couldn't help herself. She'd been listening to a new pop song by a young singer, and this woman's eyes were such a peculiar murk. And so I pulled up some best pop songs of 2016 possibilities, and I'm going to offer you a couple of them.
Okay.
Okay. So we have Ariana Grande, It Could Be Into You.
Ooh.
Which that's from her 2016 album. It could be like early to mid-career, adult career Selena Gomez, Good For You, which is the Selena Gomez A$AP Rocky song. It could be a Tove Lo song, which maybe in some ways fits Shane the best, although I don't know. Or it could be like early Dua Lipa.
Well, where is she?
She's in
where the Cannonball River meets
she's in
Missouri.
North Dakota. Right. Because we don't know. Well, we know that Shane is not on the internet. So this, you're right, this is on the radio.
On the radio. So maybe not.
So it's not Tove Lo.
Tove Lo. Yeah. I feel like it's got to be Selena because she has that like former Disney kind of like appropriate for the Midwest.
Yeah, but also I think like Ariana Grande of that era was somewhat appropriate for the Great Plains.
Right, like the high ponytail, the like very childlike kind of aesthetic. Yeah. I mean, I think it's Ariana Grande is an interesting shout, or I guess they're both kind of interesting shouts too, for their like relationship to Shane, kind of ethnic ambiguity or whatever, right?
For
like
sure.
like appealing to a proximity to whiteness when convenient, but often being critiqued for not being white enough, right? So I think those are both good shots there.
Thank you. Yeah, got some good nostalgia trips that way. Okay, so I propose a cultural artifact, and I apologize for this. So Emily Crandall raised the specter of Babysitter's Club Deluge fanfic. So I'm going to raise an actual The Americans, the television show, the Deluge fanfic, which in some ways I've always already been waiting to do for this podcast.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yes, The Americans is the primary object of concern in my other podcast. So I tried to look beyond just the spy shit, right? Mm-hmm. So you have all of the spy shit overlap. Okay, fine. But like kind of thematically, what are these two cultural artifacts doing in terms of the questions that the spy genre and the particular use of the spy genre by all the people involved in The Americans or by Stephen Markley in The Deluge, what are they able to do? It strikes me that particularly in Shane's chapters, we get all of these questions that you and I have paid such attention to over the course of podcasting about the relationship between the spying and the family and mother and daughter relationships most of all. Totally. And there's a way in which The Americans is as much a show about the family in the 1980s or the family as parable for the nation as it is about all of the spy stuff. And there's a certain then kind of way in which if we think about raising Lolly as parable for producing a collective movement of revolutionaries via the clandestine nature of it all, I think there's something notable there. The question about political violence and means and ends is absolutely central to this Shane chapter, all of the Shane chapters, and to The Americans itself. I mean, it's something that, something that Matthew and Elizabeth spend all of their time talking about. Is about means and ends and about political violence and their varying relationships to it over time. And there's something about as you come to know the characters better, the complexification of the political violence questions and the means versus ends questions become even stronger. And there's like a just kind of narrative parallel between Shane and The Americans in that way. And then even more specifically, how one thinks about political violence for achieving certain ideological commitments and where one places the primacy, which is a slightly more refined means versus ends question. Is I think part of both of those. And then even more specifically, we have, and this is where the like Lolly knows subconsciously what's going on with Shane comes through, and spoilers ahead for The Americans. So fast forward if you don't want that, is the radicalization through one's mother and through one's homeland for Shane, right? Where we have Elizabeth Jennings, played by Kerry Russell in The Americans, who is, her mother appears in their early first 3 seasons of the show very briefly, but is constantly on her mind, appears in flashbacks actually a couple of times. And literally, right, she has her homeland in the Soviet Union, but is masquerading as an American. And then obviously in Shane, we have the visit she makes to the dark surf of the Southern Hemisphere, and kind of that as a form and a touch point and a motivation for political radicalization. But even more importantly, I think it's the fact that Lolly subconsciously understands exactly what Shane is up to. That is to me the moment when this all clicked into place. This is 676. Mommy, I don't want you to go. They're going to take you. I know they're going to take you, end quote. Lolly kept repeating this, and it was too eerie and specific a fear, as if she subconsciously knew what her mom had been doing all these years. And arguably one of the defining moments, arguably the defining moment of the show The Americans, is when their daughter, Paige, played by Holly Taylor, takes what had been subconscious knowledge about what her parents, who are spies, were doing and confronts them in one of the best episodes of television ever, named Stingers, in season 3 of The Americans, that becomes a fundamental pivot point for the show. And it's in this chapter that is in which Shane is so preoccupied with what she is and more so what she is not passing along to Lolly. To have one thing that she is passing down to Lolly being a subconscious absorption by osmosis of being a clandestine operative struck me as so definitive of the Americans that I couldn't stop seeing those two things together.
That's so great. I gotta watch that episode.
It's really good. And
I've only ever watched the episodes I watched podcasts with you guys, which is silly, but
that's fine. Singers is really good, and that is also one of our best podcast episodes.
Amazing. Great. Well, I know what I'm doing
with the wonderful Lily Goren.
Oh, fun.
Joining Danielle and I.
Awesome. Wow. I feel like there's still more, but
yeah. I feel like these book 5 episodes will be
they're going to be long. Yeah. Should we make some sarcastic digs at our opponents?
Yeah. I mean, Tastes Like Chicken and We'll All Be With God Soon
it got me so good. But
and also Murdoch's explanation of it.
Yeah. Yeah. What does he say? It's on
something about the futility of it all.
This is on 662. Quinn says, I don't get it. He goes, yeah, neither do I. Barely remember when I had it inked. Just woke up one night with it in my head. Then a couple days later I'm applying moisturizer stuff to a crusty new tat. Pretty sure it's something this guy I knew in EOD said. He was like my mentor, my father, my brother. Now I don't remember his name or what he looked like, but maybe it just means we'll all pass on and disappointingly every fucking thing just tastes like chicken. And then he says, just as
that's Murdoch the podcaster.
That's so good. I also laughed on the very first page that Parmesh at the hotel that they're staying in says,
his jokes are great.
Being underwater on your mortgage ain't exactly figurative around here. Really got me.
It's a really fun thing to put into a novel.
Yeah, so true.
Yeah. The last paragraph and then last line is just also really LOL worthy. In the middle of town, all the gas stations were surrounded by students wearing particulate masks or scarves around their mouths, holding signs about the dust, the system, the atmosphere, the deluge. Dun, dun, dun. And again, also that comes in the Shane and Kate chapter, when that phrase and that term has been associated with Kate because she says it during her siege speech.
Yeah.
Is really funny. The drivers honked angrily, but the kids refused to let them pass. Luckily, Shane's truck was electric.
So good.
Fries into the sunset.
I also like on 664 when she says she didn't start hating the oil men until much later when she began dabbling with radical boyfriends in deep ecology. That is so funny.
Girl, what a life.
Dabbling with radical boyfriends in deep ecology.
Dabbling seems like the appropriate level of engagement.
I know. So good. I don't know if I had any other.
I did not. This was not the funniest chapter.
No, indeed. Okay. Do we need anything else?
No, I think in our solidarities, allies, and enemies, we talked about Murdoch coming through in the clutch and literally saving Shane and Lolly's life.
Yeah. Wow. What a guy.
Yeah. Their connection is really amazing.
I know. He was looming way larger in the novel for me on this read than the first time I read it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Do you have a proposal for a call to action?
I have so many, but I'm just going to go with, I think one of my favorite lines of the whole chapter, maybe the whole novel. And it's actually from a Murdoch text box, appropriately. She was the weapon. Oh,
that's so good. Okay. I was going to rip one of the signs in an abandoned feedlot when they're going back to Kansas, which says, fuck off, nothing left to steal.
I think
yours is better.
I think we work that into the episode description.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Wow. Coming up next.
Yeah. Headline splash. Surely that'll be fun and light.
The last one, I think, probably.
One per book. So,
and then the last chapter from Jackie's perspective, the 7th day.
I am so excited for, but more than that, just have a sense of overwhelming dread about rereading and talking about that chapter.
Yeah, cryptic foreshadowing.
I mean, I think that's I have my content warnings for my class. They're in the LMS. So I'm you don't have to look at this. If you want to look at it, it's available to you. And then when it's especially tough reading, I say something very brief in class about the next time. And then it's been just like 4 days in a row where I've said my broken record, like you might want to extra take a look at the content notes if those are helping you.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
That is very true of this Jackie chapter.
Indeed. I'm sad.
Yeah.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us on this very long and very, I feel like it's getting wistful.
Wistful is an appropriate word.
It's a very long and wistful episode of We Are the Deluge.
In our wistful era, we are the Deluge.